So this is Senate Appropriations, and we're continuing our work on the 2024 budget. And we have Sarah Clark here from Joint Fiscal Office running through what would be the recommendations that we have received today from our Economic Development Committee. These are obviously recommendations. We'll have to look at them within our lens of available funding. We gave them a target of 40 million. I think Sarah can run through the spreadsheet.
Yes, everyone, maybe they're on Andrea's desk. Does everyone have this big sheet?
I don't.
And we're not making any decisions on these today. We're running through them. And then we'll go through the language. Not enough. Oh, we got it.
Great. Okay. So let me just quickly orient you to the big sheet that you have in front of you. So the top box on the sheet are base appropriations. That's though Senate Economic Development did review some of those programs, they're not making a recommendation to you on that. It's the bottom box, which are one-time appropriations, where they had a target of $40 million. The column that is shaded in blue is what was in the governor's recommend for workforce and economic development. The gray area that says FY24 House is what the House proposed in their version of the budget. And then the orange box that says FY24 Senate Economic Development are the recommendations that they're providing to this committee. And so I think with that, maybe we'll just focus on, do you want to walk through all of the items or focus on the items that have changed? I know that David Hall is afterwards going to walk us through the language that's the policy language that's associated with the appropriations.
I guess we can look at the final one, I guess, over to the right.
Over to the right. Okay. And I can focus on the items that change, or we can walk through all of the items.
I think probably we need to walk through them all.
Okay.
Just very quickly.
Okay. So the row number 13 is the state college's CCV tuition reduction workforce priority. The governor recommend had $10 million. The House budget included $4 million for that purpose. And Senate Economic Development is agreeing with the House position of $4 million.
And I think maybe our education committee wanted to 10. So we're gonna be in a position of reviewing different perspectives. But I think that was on the list we got from could go with the governor's recommend. Okay, let's keep going.
Great. So row 14 is the ESAC Continue 802 Opportunity Program. That was $3.4 million of one time, and the governor recommends. The House actually moved that to the base. And so Senate Economic Development is not making a formal recommendation, though verbally I did hear them say they support that program in the base.
Because it would be an ongoing benefit.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Row number 15, let's see. The House version of the budget reduced an appropriation from last year's workforce bill, Act 183. It contained a $1.5 million appropriation to the Department of Labor for a regional workforce expansion program. The House recommended and included in their budget a reduction of that original appropriation by $1.2 million. They then redeployed those funds in their House construct. Senate Economic Development is recommending that $1.2 million be restored. And so that is what you see.
And committee, we had testimony from the Department of Labor Commissioner saying that there was a delay, in startup because he wanted to have feedback from the workforce investment boards. And so the House said, well, the money isn't being spent, there's a lot there, let's redirect it. And they're saying, wait a minute, this is a program we put in, it was in S11 that we passed last year. We want to continue our work and not just abandon everything that we've done. And our Senate Economic Development Committee is reaffirming what the funding that they did and the proposed use of it that was in S11. And therefore they had to buy it back because the House took the 1.2 and used it somewhere else. So just to connect that back to the testimony that we had from Commissioner Harrington.
The next item on row 16 is a $200,000 appropriation to the Department of Labor for the new American workforce. This was part of the Governor recommend and the House agreed, and Senate Economic Development is also supporting that recommendation to this committee. The next item, row 17, is a $1 million appropriation to the Department of Labor for workforce development, work-based learning and training program. $1 million was in the GovRec and the House version, and Senate Economic Development supporting that at $1 million.
How's that different from the workforce development federal money?
Oh, the WIOA?
But this is general.
This is general.
Yeah, so other than it being general fund, how's it different from the
The other thing that I
WIOA federal funds that we don't even use all of?
I don't know the answer to that, but I can follow up.
One of the questions that I'm going to ask, is this new? Because one of the things that we've talked about is in this budgetary environment, being very cautious about what we're starting doing. And is it something that we would be committing ourselves, on an ongoing basis? So it's like the discussion around the positions with the opioid settlement. If you put them in, then are you actually inherent in that is creating a demand for ongoing spending? So my question is this a new initiative?
General fund.
And this is general fund, but a lot of the workforce money is general fund because the federal, we always really categorical in who can
Right.
get served. That's the problem with that. But we need to know, is that new?
It's a training program established in 10 VSA section 547. Which
Well, that's not helpful.
I know it's not helpful. I'm saying that loud in
You have that
case.
section memorized?
I don't either, so I can quickly look it up right now, or I can get back to you.
Why don't we
Yeah.
come back? We'll just keep running through. Since
I
we're
think
not
it's
making
existing, that's what I assume, but
existing. Okay.
all right, okay, great. Okay, number 18. The governor recommend included $4 million for the new and relocated worker grants program. The House did not include any funding for that program. Senate Economic Development is recommending to do $2 million in that program.
Is that the reimbursement of moving
Yes,
expenses?
if you can find a place to live. Okay.
Good luck with that.
All right.
Okay. I'm gonna skip over if you're ready, the next one, row 19, because that's the Rail Trail Community Grants Connection Program, which I think Chris, my colleague, was just talking about that. The next one, row 20, is one that the governor had included $18,000 as match on a HUD grant. It's not included in the House version of the bill because I think we addressed that issue in budget adjustment. So the row 21 is $117,000 that was included in the GovRec for the
I
250.
support the
I know
government.
you do, but we're not making any final decisions.
Senate Economic
Well, I'm
Development.
sorry that economic development doesn't understand economic development.
No, they.
No, they
included it.
They are
Oh,
included.
yeah, I
Our
support
Senate
the-
meeting.
I support the economic development.
Arguing against yourselves every year.
Oh, good.
Yes.
They are recommending inclusion. So,
I move we close that one out right now.
I'll explain, you'll see some kind of peach shading at the rows we're gonna review down below. The reason that's shaded is because that's what was included in H484, which was at one point in time a standalone bill that was incorporated into the House version of the budget. That's why those areas are shaded. So row 22 is a new program that's created called the Emerging Pathways Grant Program, which is $500,000.
Is that part of
To-
the Pathways program that we?
No, this is
It's a
different.
different
That's
pathway?
Agency of Education. It must be flexible pathways.
It's a new program that's created when we go through the F sections of the bill. It's a new program that's created.
What does
Um,
it do?
One of the things that we're gonna have to look at in another area, which is supposed to be under flexible pathways, and that is the level of support we have for our ABE program to help kids complete their high school education. So I'm just saying, if this is new, we may need to look at that relative to that obligation that a lot of kids that are having trouble with maybe an instructor or a course are relying on our adult basic ed program as an alternative, and that comes under flexible. So I'm just connecting something new here for $500,000 with the request. No, we're working on it.
And so the program is to provide grants to expand support, mentoring, and professional development to prospective educators seeking licensure through the Agency of Education's Emerging Pathways program.
So this is
So
part of
this,
the,
this is instructors?
So this is for educators.
Okay,
Yes.
so is this the mentor, the apprenticeship kind of model?
I think it's more like recruit,
If you have anything to add, but.
you know, to
So it's paying.
keep people moving into the pipeline.
Once we know what it is, we can decide whether to fund it.
Okay, all right. So it's new, it's a new initiative.
It's a new program.
It's something new because every
Yes,
area is
yes.
experiencing a workforce shortage, so everybody's trying to think of ways to get the inadequate labor supply to come to their door. Whether
What we
it's
did for
nursing,
nurses, they just want to do it for teachers.
and, well, dental hygienists, and I think there might be some others.
Yeah, there are.
And then, of course, we have that for the incentives for the state police, and then we have the additional,
Firefighters,
Corrections.
yeah, and corrections.
I don't know why we need supervisors.
We have a lot of incentives.
Where are you? Oh, just.
Row
25, but you don't have to have it.
Okay, we go to 24.
Do you want to do 23 first? Or did you guys just do that while I was?
We did it on our own.
You did, okay, the BSAC, the 2.5 million, okay.
Yeah.
So row 24 is $30,000 to the Agency of Education for historically underrepresented educator affinity program. I believe this is also a new program that was established.
General.
That is general fund.
Yeah, this is all general fund here.
Yes.
But what can you do with 30,000?
That's what I just asked, the same question.
So it's to provide grants for the support of existing and the development of new educator affinity groups for historically underrepresented groups.
What do they apply
Sounds like
for?
a
already
group
there.
discussion.
So they apply for like
Or
some small amount, like $2,500 or something?
So I don't know the details on the answer to these questions. I think David Hall is gonna walk us through the language, but he may not know all of the details on these
All right, and the
specific
next is
questions.
DOC. So this isn't anything they asked for. And the other thing I'd bring to the committee's attention, if you're on joint fiscal, in fact, the Department of Corrections received, I think it was 600, I've got the sheet of money from the Department of Justice specifically for training and additional development.
Yeah.
So I think this was put in without knowing that in fact we are getting a very significant slug of federal money specifically for the corrections employees. So just, and I'll get out the, not everybody's on joint fiscal, that's why I want to bring that up as something that just came through, I think within the last maybe 2 weeks. Yeah,
I lost the line. What number is that?
that is 25.
So the next line is 26, which is an existing program to Forest Parks and Recreation, the Vermont Serve, Learn, and Earn program. It was not in the governor recommend. The House budget included 2.4 million for this purpose. Senate Economic Development is taking a little bit of a haircut of $124,000 from that program to meet their target.
That's one that we have been funding in its an expansion of the youth conservation corps.
Good.
And it estimated to serve the they hope to serve 500 individuals, and
They
these are
did serve
what?
They said they did serve 500
Well,
last year.
Can't remember, but they've been doing improvements to parks, they've been doing painting. Some of the referrals are from VR, so we're really talking about a program. While we're doing a lot on professional development, these are Vermonters that are very much on the margin, more on the margin in terms of work skills and experience. So we're not making any decisions, but just some background on that one. Climate.
So climate workforce, this is again, I'd say a new program that was,
Climate workforce education.
yep. And it's,
So is this education for our climate workforce?
so the language indicates that these funds will be used to create a climate workforce focused digital public resource that engages current and prospective employees. It'll include centralized information about career and education opportunities in Vermont that build awareness of needed climate careers.
Okay, well, we're not vetting anything at this point, but that's new.
That is new and was not part of the governor recommend.
Let's go to VSAC.
Yes,
No.
yep, VSAC, but I understand that Advance Vermont is connected to VSAC.
It's connected, it's not,
Pass-through.
Right.
it's a pass-through CP.
Oh, all right, so that's again a new program, so we'll keep going here.
Yep, so the next one, row 28 is to ACCD for the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund to do some business coaching for $180,000. I think again that this is a new program. And
I think we also need to have an inventory of what we're funding already for business. Because, you know, in VHCD, we have the ag liability, which is working with our agriculture sector and on business plans and viability. I have a feeling that we may have created kind of a labyrinth here of, then we've got the Small Business Association. I don't know. It seems like this is an area that we put a lot of money out in different ways. So we might want to take a look at that. And it's also a new program.
yeah,
So the Office of Engagement at UVM.
so this is a $2.5 million proposal, was not in the governor recommend.
It says forgivable loans.
Is this the
Forgivable loans
same
for
thing they had in last year's bill, Act 183? Wasn't it? Yeah, they shaking his head.
What is the, what are the loans for?
This is the $5,000 rate per student to who's a graduate to stay another month, 2 years.
Oh, the money that's just getting all the press now,
Yeah.
that if you stay here for 2 years, we'll give you some money.
You'll forgive some of your students.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, right.
No matter what you're doing.
So we
what you're doing.
created that last year. And we had. And
I guess they just
is it-
continue.
is it any critical occupation, or you just have a college loan and we'll help you if you want to?
Stay here.
Stay here and go fishing.
You
They
can buy a
did,
house
this-
or
I think they
something.
chose.
Yeah.
They were looking at.
So,
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Oh, yes.
I know that later on down the list, UVM's had 3 million cut for upskill, which they are very anxious to keep. I would rather personally fund upskilling than the forgivable loans. So maybe we could put that into discussion. They're relatively similar amounts.
But we're not getting to that, but we're just running through all of them.
Yeah, just wanted to
Yeah,
flag.
but it's a good comment,
Yeah.
because if we have to start prioritizing, and there are a couple of other areas where we're getting requests for money that the House didn't necessarily deal with, and so we're gonna have to see how that all adds up. So, yes,
Plus, I just on the Office of Engagement, I've always thought that that was a somewhat malleable, amorphous concept. And the idea that they would be in charge of forgivable loans doesn't necessarily track with what they were created to do. So I have the feeling that they're kind of searching around for a role that can be consistently funded. So that's why, one of the reasons why I like upskill for better.
Because it lends itself to one-time funding. That's the other thing we have to keep in mind is we're dealing with one-time funding here. All right, so
The next item, row 30, is $700,000 to the state colleges for a new restorative justice bachelor's program. It was in the House budget. Senate Economic Development is recommending a $200,000 reduction to that
I
program.
guess we need to hear from them. They had two programs. The next one is the 3D. And both were programs that they wanted to set up because they felt that they would be courses that are certificate programs that would be attractive and help them with enrollment. And one of the things we've been hearing about is that transformation plan calls for them to reduce the structural deficit of 25 million over 5 years. And the focus has all been on reductions or where reductions are proposed, but that gap can be closed with higher enrollment and higher revenues. So the question becomes one of, will this in fact help our state college system attract students by having coursework that is relevant and responsive to labor market needs? So we'll just keep going, but I do think we have somebody here who might be representing our state college system and could perhaps give us some feedback. I'm going to keep moving. 1,500 for the 3D, and they left that alone.
That's correct.
Okay, and
That's also a new program.
and it came with all kinds of, actually the language is so prescriptive, it'll be done at 2 sites and the length. And what they did is just plunk the description that the state college system provided and put it into the, it's in the budget, and it's really language of specificity that if we want to fund this, we just say we're going to fund it, but we don't need to say it needs to be 2 campuses and then length needs to be X or whatever, maybe, I don't know. I'm not only do I not like studies, I don't like gratuitous and unnecessary language. Well,
I'm unanimous.
no, I think what they did was just plunk I went back and looked at the proposal we got, and all they did was take that descriptive language and add it. And I think our view is we would just appropriate the money for that purpose. And it turned out they wanted to change the 2 different campuses. We wouldn't preclude that from happening. So
That, I mean, those 2 items right there, we wanted to cut or change $5 million a year, and here we are talking about pumping in 2 million.
well, this is helping me. The purpose of this is to get courses that will attract more students.
Yeah, but they should be doing that anyways.
Well,
to get
especially
their
right out of high
revenues
school.
up or cut
To lock
their.
them in right out of high school.
Well, we're trying to help with both sides.
Um,
I tell Dad,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
you give me $5 and I'll spend 10 to 5 and I'll stand up and be home.
So if it gets the lawnmower, what do you care?
all I'm telling you is that those were requests that would help enrollment. And so it would mean,
It's 100 full-time scholarships, 100 tuition scholarships, no room and board.
are you talking about line 32 now?
I am talking about line 31.
The CD?
3D.
I'm talking about the critical
Oh, all right,
occupations.
we're down to the next.
Critical occupations.
So this is an existing program, the $3.8 million. That was in the House version of the bill. Senate Economic Development is agreeing with that recommendation, and it's to provide scholarships for students with a household income of $75,000 or less in critical occupations, so such as early childhood, clinical mental health counseling, dental hygienists. criminal justice and all levels of nursing.
And this is where they made the big change in
That's
order
right.
to fund the remote worker.
That's right.
Yeah.
They removed this $3 million to UVM for upskill Vermont scholarships. It was in the governor's recommend, it was in the House version of the budget, and some economic development. Wrote it out.
What's that credential value?
Well, gee, I don't know, do we have credentials with no value?
I don't know, I mean, a credential of value, it's not, sounds like a Bitcoin.
This is where you said that.
It's a tough room.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to have more discussion, I believe. That's critical.
It's $350,000 for the Bitcoin.
Is that what it is?
Where's the big?
No, that's your,
No.
that's his social comment.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right, we're just running through this, so,
Yeah, so the credential of value is $350,000. I don't know the definition of a credential of value, but I believe it is in statute. So I'm sure David will tell us more about it.
all right, so,
Economic
and-
development up to left it at 350.
Yes, yep, that's right.
Right.
Okay, so the next item on row 35 is $1 million appropriation to VSAC for the Vermont Psychiatric Mental Health Nurse Forgivable Loan Program. This is also a new program that is established in the F section of the big bill.
what, I'm having trouble here with my line.
Line
Yeah, it's hard to
55.
follow.
35.
I don't know long enough. I
These
don't-
are the advanced practice
I don't
nurses.
have one long enough.
My page isn't long enough.
All right, so,
Mental health, psychiatric, forgivable.
Yeah, advanced practice nurses.
It's
Probably from
It's reports.
okay, all right, but,
I might assume
I was down.
Use your EMD.
When we walk through the language, David is gonna talk more about what the components of this program.
If there's anything we've had some discussion around, and that's EMS training, if there's something that, the issue is, we're dealing with the fact that our workforce is smaller. And I don't think there's any occupation really that we've got a surplus of workers.
Right.
So,
Unless we can get people from out of state to move here,
we can't.
find housing for them.
And we hear from hospitals and that they have people, they will take a job or teaching, and then they say they can't find a place to live.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
and then we had our opportunity and
All right, so now AHS, healthcare
This
workforce.
is $170,000 for a limited service position. It was in the gov rec. It was also established last year in the workforce bill in Act 183 and funded last year. So I believe the intent is that this is a 3-year position.
kind of
So this will be the second year of
This
funding.
looks like.
Right,
a
second year is
brain.
3, so it's gonna go from
I
3
love
to 3.
that.
Yeah.
One position per year.
All right, so now we have DA SSA training. It's 3 million.
$3 million. There was a similar program that was funded last year in Act 183. It was $1.5 million that went to AHS for to provide training for
And they
employees of the
pleaded
DAs
with
and
us
SSAs.
that if this gets funded, that it not be administered by the AHS central office. They don't have the staffing, and this is something they don't want to do. So that's a note that if we want to fund this, we need to find a different administrative home. And Shayla is, she's not even scowling, she's praying. All right.
Okay.
But yeah, they were concerned about some of the requirements when we took testimony about the FTE per agency as a way of equilibrating the fund allocation, but Vermont Care Partners felt that they could do it without that and do it better. And they
Oh,
felt-
that was the $1.5 million that we had from the tobacco settlement that I
Yeah.
parked about 10 years ago.
But they have had a 94% retention rate for last year's program, as compared with a 65% previous.
Well, no one's, the question is how it gets administered.
Yeah, that's it, that's the question.
Working Bridges, and that's a new program.
Covered bridges or?
No, working, not covered. I think Covered Bridges was originally the name of the Newbury facility.
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh,
Too soon, too soon.
and
This Vermont training program, this is, remember, this was the one Vince discovered was even paying the wages of employees to go to training, and I think
Yeah.
that got changed. Originally, it's been at ACCD, and they would like more money.
So this is specific to the CHIPS Act
They're
and
not
the
worth the
semiconductors.
All right, so, maybe that's in the language, but it's specific for, and this is the chip production, and is this really basically funding global boundaries?
Well, the CHIPS Act, the federal CHIPS Act, that requires that business applicants for the federal funding be able to show a state commitment of a certain amount to receive leverage from federal dollars. Right now, there's not much certainty on how much will be needed or when or how or by whom it will be utilized. It's a reservation of this funding in anticipation of later in the year.
So is there language that makes it very clear that we're making this money, like we are with the IIJA money, that it's specifically being appropriated to service the match required under this? If not, maybe we need to think about that.
And we need to put it in our accounting of how much we put forward for match.
I don't know if we,
You know, at the end of the day, when we are totaling up how much we put forward for match.
now we have another small business technical assistance exchange. We're funding the RDCs to do business assistance. We're funding, this is another area of funding that got
This is an
added.
existing program.
You
Established
know who administers it? It's
ACCD.
do they do it as a grant out?
They subgrant the money to provide services and assistance through the Small Business Technical Assistance Exchange, which
God, did we create that?
I think we've created sponsors.
Or isn't this a function of our RDCs?
it was established in statute, the Small Business Technical Assistance Exchange.
It would be in this bill. It's a services that they were providing with COVID funding for small businesses to get business technical assistance from anything from architects to IT to accounting.
All right, so this got created as a result of COVID and
Yeah.
federal money.
And now we're gonna continue general fund.
We have not made that decision.
I understand that, but can we get a list of those
That we,
items that were COVID funds that we're now recommending to move to general fund?
I think that would be helpful because we know that we've created an awful lot of
Yeah.
programs that we can't continue.
Right.
Housing is right up there. Obviously, the food stamp program and the loss of the nutrition bump.
Yep.
So, what is, this is the state match for,
there's another question. Would be nice to know how much has actually been put out the door, used. And then whether or not we were thinking of having carry forward from funds that haven't been.
So interesting.
well, we do give carry forward authority on some, but some of the funds actually have to be used or they're swept back if they've had COVID.
They're missing
And I believe the House actually got an update from the administration on any of these funds that would be in that category. So we can find out.
And Senate Economic Development also took some testimony, looking at some of the prior American Rescue Plan Act, State Fiscal Recovery Fund appropriations and the status of those. And essentially, it's given the kind of diligence of standing up those programs and making sure that they were established in a way that would be compliant with eligibility criteria. It's been, I'd say, a little bit delayed, but now I think we'll see in the next quarter or two more expenditures going out the door. Is the
But that's,
expectation.
that funding can be over 3 years, so,
That's correct.
you know, we can't, and this early in the stage, start saying it's available because a lot of it was intended to be multi-year, so. But we can take a look at, obviously, this is different because it's coming in for general
Right.
fund.
Yeah.
So what did we create here? And
Well, should we continue? It was designed during the COVID
Right.
crisis, and should we continue? But I'm not saying that today about any one of these items. Just
no,
that
72,000,
Yep,
and that's the match.
that's the match.
And that, is that the one we got the $8,900 request for? Is that a?
No, this is the 89, I think is for their underlying base funding, and this is
I thought the 89 was the
89 was-
89th birthday.
No,
Or 90th birthday.
8,900.
that's the 35,000 for the symphony.
That's
I brought
90.
35,000 for the birthday, we tried to make it 30.
This is just truing up to the federal grant. The 89 is the base of the federal grant. This is for an additional drawdown of dollars.
Well intentioned.
Okay, all right. And then, is this new?
This is a new program, Rural Industry Development Grant Program.
This is the one where would be a revolving loan fund for developing industrial sites, particularly targeted toward Canadian, Commissioner
Also
Casey.
part of his,
Uh,
the governor's.
Described to us.
Okay, so, but it's new.
Yes.
And then,
And then the last one is another million, and so Senate Economic Development, the House had $5 million, I'm sorry, I'll go back to the Rural Industry Development Grant Program. The Senate Economic Development is recommending to reduce that by $1 million. And then the last item on this sheet is the row 45, which is $1 million to the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets for the Working Lands Enterprise Fund. Senate Economic Development.
So was there a $40 million box?
Yes.
Yes.
So if Ag wants to do 10 million, we'd be over the box.
no, that's not including the 10 to ag.
Oh, okay.
Because you're,
And these, I have to say, this is, right now, this is still pretty fluid. Do we have the 40 million for this particular, because we've got, we know, for example, one of the things we're trying to look at is the capital bill and some budgets, bonding budgets that got passed, and therefore the amount of money that is available is one of some of those projects stranded. So the only thing I can once again say to people is that when we look at sort of the landscape as it's changed and additional requests that come in, the $40 million box may not be, the final figure. Maybe it's 38 or something, I don't know.
You see like 10 million.
Gone.
No, they
This is your
sent
10 million
it,
from the
sent it
sheet.
out,
Gone.
and then
So
I must be back
gotta
in
fill
a
in the
bigger
yellow.
box.
it says 40 million is the box.
No, we gave our ag committee 10 million.
Oh, God, what did we get to this year?
General fund.
Oh, my God.
Well,
That's not even,
No,
You
no.
want it, let's see, you've got 4
I'll
million.
take
but
that
not
back.
for-
I'll
you
take
better take that back, because if you start going to count, that number,
And don't forget, this is one time.
I'm just trying to,
you just want all the base.
no, I'm just trying to help Bobby because I think they took his 10 million.
No, he
No.
No,
has,
they put it back in.
he has to figure out what fits in his 10 million.
Yeah.
All right, well, I was
I
worried
thought
about
it was
Bobby.
lost, but
I was
like,
worried
Ollie, I
about
know
Bobby's
where
10
it
million. The way I read it was they took 40 million and you didn't have anything left, Bobby.
Yeah, you're right.
Bobby, you have nothing here.
Well, I just got it.
Are you prepared to fill in the blanks?
Part of them.
All right.
I wanna, we got a meeting, I thought we were gonna meet this morning, got pushed to 4:30 tonight. And I don't know if we're gonna make it tonight if how late we were.
All right, well, you gobbled up quite a bit with organic farmers. That's what, 6.9?
Or 8 or 7.
Aren't they outside the 10 minutes?
No, they're not.
Oh, come on.
No, they forgot to put it in the budget.
They thought we were taking care of it, but I was like, how can you build the budget? And assume that if you spend all the money, how we would find a way to do it. We will. So,
Yeah, I mean, we got money. I mean, we're gonna take care of those guys.
all right.
But I just wanna firm up the number as firm as,
You mean for the organic farmers?
yeah, cause it could go down and then that would
Yeah.
open up something else here and give some,
Well, I know you wanted to do premiums, right?
the,
Premiums, or was that included in the
yeah,
6.9?
no, but there may be enough there, cause that shouldn't be a lot, I mean. one-
All right. So I guess ag is yet to be determined.
Yeah, I'll get
All
you.
right, so, David, do you want to start, we're gonna go start working on the language.
You're the clerk, it's your job.
Where's he?
Taking a chair.
You're the clerk.
Where's he?
You working on this?
Where's he?
Section
Yeah, I know it's.
Section 7.
Language.
Check.
I have one.
We'll get something new. Get more paper, how about that? So.
Another tree.
Um,
There's just a whole bunch of ash trees.
Another
With
tree.
an
You
emerald.
wanna walk those floors out, you get a chance. We gotta protect
Phil, are you-
those trees.
we need to get started with this, so it's be good.
Okay.
All right, so, why don't we start going through this? And this is, it's been amended to what the Senate just did, economic development, or is this just what the House?
The language that you have here is the narrative version of Senate Economic Development's proposal. David Hall, legislative counsel. So it's, you know, titled H 484.
I understand that. I just wanted to know, and it reflects the decisions that,
It does.
are here.
It does.
Okay.
Again, this started life as the House bill independently got put into the House budget. And so it looks like this because Senate Economic Development worked against sort of the House version of that language. I have a separate table if you ever want to see it, so you can track where in the budget it lives relative to this document. But Madam Chair, what level of specificity would you like me to breeze through this?
Well, I don't know. God, 51 pages. I'm not
It's a
sure.
lot.
The question becomes, to what extent, I guess, what I'm struggling with, if it's a new program, then you're having to construct the language, and how much of it is either modification or something that already exists. But we can, why don't we run through, because it was a separate bill that just got folded in, man, there's a lot of text, and I guess my question is how much of this we actually have to go with the appropriation.
And there are also questions here, as we were taking testimony in our committee, and then the issues that came up from those who were testifying about administration. So how the money is sent out.
I mean, my question is, like, do we have to get into a definition of VSAC? I mean, normally we just make an appropriation to VSAC for, whatever it is we want.
I think I can give you one sentence on each section, and if you have more questions, then we can drill down, but you don't need to read through all of section one.
No, my question is, how much of this do we have to plunk in the budget?
Well, I mean, if it's creating the new program and you want the program, then it needs a home somewhere.
I know, but we already have in statute, what the definition of VSAC, I guess, I don't know. I guess you need to have that as making it clear that's the home means it's established, but.
Yeah, so this first one is based on the model that you've adopted in so many other professions. You did it last year in Act 183, where you created the nurse forgivable loan incentive program. And now there's going to be a psychiatric NP forgivable loan program. This one is the teacher forgivable loan program. So it all follows that same model, goes through VSAC, 1 year service, 1 year loan forgiveness. That's it. And you don't have to read all the words, it's the exact same language, just repopulated in different titles based on the different professions.
Okay. Yes.
Well, I have questions about section 6 when we get.
So the question, yes, well, I know we do. Do we need to go through all the language? I think we should go through the language and for the ones that we are gonna put in the budget. Because we haven't made any decision around, are we gonna start these new programs? And if we're saying new programs may have merit, but we're having a hard time adequately funding the ones we already have, then that will obviously influence what language we need. So, all right, so why don't we buzz through your forgivable loan incentive. And the question I have is how much of this, is there something done through, are we doing a combination of administering entities? Is some going through VSAC, some going through AHEC?
I didn't see AHEC in the language at all.
And they do a lot of the loans, forgivable loans for the health professions, including dental hygienists, including nurses,
They
et cetera.
do loan repayment.
Well,
Yes, they do.
is that,
It's different than the forgivable loan, which is a grant, which is
Tuition.
loan, and you make the loan and then.
do we, so the question is, do we have any loan repayment provisions in here?
No, these are all forgivable loan, the same construct through VSAC.
Okay, all right, so they're all really grants, okay.
So
Why don't we call
this
them
one's a little
grants?
wonky. The money for section 1 is actually in section 4, and it's $2.5 million, and it is a new program.
And it's- All right, let's keep going.
Okay, so for section 2, the money is also in section 4. It's $500,000. This is the one you had asked about, the emerging pathways to teaching. This is this grant program. They could go to schools or to organizations. The point here is to help to get new teachers who are taking these alternative paths to getting into the profession. So not straight licensure, but rather through the apprenticeship model or peer review model. So the point here is to support these prospective teachers through this grant program, either through schools or nonprofits.
And I know that schools have been talking about this because there might be like someone who's a retired engineer or has a really good background and just don't happen to have the education credentials, and probably have greater depth and knowledge of the subject area. So the question of this apprenticeship approach is viewed, I guess, as a way of recruiting people who might be coming into education through a different route.
Emerging pathways.
So that was 500?
Yes. And
Okay.
so section 3 doesn't have an appropriation, but it sort of has this revenue impact where you're suspending the collection of teacher licensing fees for a period of years. And that's about the extent of my familiarity with the mathematical impacts. I would defer to JFO on that. It says that the foregone would be accounted for through funds appropriated to the Agency of Education from the general fund. So however that math checks out.
Who whose licenses are we suspending, the fees are we suspending?
These are the peer review process one-time licensure
This
fees.
is
But
like
for
a
whom?
$2,500.
No, for whom?
The people applied, like the engineer you just spoke to, they need to pay a $2,500 fee to go through the process to get their license. So that's waiving that fee.
For
But
for
the pathway,
the prior group.
I think it's
Except if they get the driver's license.
it's attached to that pathways program. You're leading them through the pathways.
All right. And then you're saying, and we'll let
to
you,
waive the fee.
you can open, we'll even open the door.
Yes.
Okay, all
I
right.
won't let it hit you.
All right, so that's, so the fee suspension is only for the people that are coming through that alternative licensure,
Specifically the peer review process.
which is the prior
Section
section. Yeah, all right. So we don't know how many that would be. It's just, it would
It'll
be,
be increased, but it'll only be increased because we have the other program, so it's not really lost. That part would be revenue. The lost revenue would only be somebody who's gonna do it again.
I think that could be pretty clear. Okay, we'll keep moving. Educator workforce diversity.
So this is your $30,000 grant that you had a question about. And again, this is to support new or existing affinity groups for underrepresented communities, to collect demographic information about the teacher workforce, educator workforce, try to understand why there is an underrepresentation of these communities and help these groups that are trying to promote more representation in the education world. So that's, that's new, 30,000.
It's an additional to the, it references those other programs, but it's
So the agency shall submit an educator demographic information section.
If you go to a library, literature.
you know what line it is.
I don't have that chart. Yeah, my other.
Could you tell us what section 4 was?
Section 4 is the
24.
two appropriations that go along with sections 1 and 2. So those numbers that we had, the values of 2.5 million and 500,000, those are actually located in section 4. So the first part of section 5 is the demographic information. The second part is the grant program with the $30,000 appropriation.
Go on.
Are we ready for 6? Or?
So we have,
I'm ready for 6.
we have the
I'm waiting.
2.5 million to VSAC, and that's the forgivable loan, so that's the appropriation. Okay, so now we can go on to 6.
Yeah, I do know, I want to talk to the corrections commissioner and have judiciary look at this. But I will point out on
6 and
page
7.
9,
6 and 7?
but on page 9, so I find it fascinating. This is the second time I've seen it today where the House Institutions and Corrections on and before March 15th, 2024, the department and the contracted vendor shall testify for that before the House Committee on Corrections and Institutions.
Nothing about the Senate.
No, we don't exist.
They'll just tell you what you.
And who put this together? Our Economic Development Committee didn't notice that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Good, I didn't read it.
The question, though, is we may not need that because we're thinking we won't fund it in light of the federal grant.
I agree,
Right.
and that, I actually had conversations this morning and last night with people regarding, believe it or not, joining with Texas on recruitment efforts. Because both states, a little different, but both states,
It's a little,
a few differences between
Uh-huh.
Texas and.
geographically, politically,
But we have
culturally.
Republican governors.
Okay.
Both have prison.
Yeah,
But seriously, that's one of the things that's being discussed. I think it's unique and it'd be a great idea, but we do have the grant. I don't know why. Anyway, they can testify in front of the.
all right, so I think we don't need to worry too much about that because we think that they've already gotten this money and more, and I realize it is a slight to this body.
To this
but-
body, but also I would note on page 13 that they granted qualified immunity to the peer support specialist.
That's getting into policy that no budget.
Way beyond the budget.
That's minor policy.
A minor. Okay.
So I just point that out.
And is there an appropriation for that?
Yeah, 500 million, 500,000.
Well, that's for the training,
No, but this peer support thing has another 500,000.
does it?
I don't believe there's not an appropriation.
I don't think
Yeah,
so.
support
Oh,
program. It's
there
not an
is-
appropriation.
Okay, I'm
Peer
sorry.
support
Doesn't have,
specialists, we're getting-
Well-
doesn't have appropriation.
Then, I think the question for you to advise us, should we strike this section? It
I think-
doesn't even, it's not even money related.
Definitely policy
Big policy.
Huge,
that
okay,
should be part of either health and welfare or judiciary.
okay.
I mean, it involves
Both.
both committees.
Okay. In any case, this is not the appropriate
No,
place to be
It's not.
putting this. All right, we'll keep going. We're on to page 8, and this has to do the serve, learn, and earn from appropriation. I think that's probably pretty standard because we've done this for a couple of years. And it looks, it's a fairly short bit of language. Section 8.
Oh,
That's
section
the,
8,
that's the
you're beyond
old
where I was.
expanded youth conservation board.
I was still trying to figure out why somebody wouldn't be liable for this.
We're saying that this is not an appropriate home for this language.
I was kind of trying to figure that out.
Yeah, now we have, yeah. Section 9, that's again, that we're really trying to figure out why we're getting into this level of funding. And so this is the language here, straightforward, if we do it. Number 10, we're gonna have a climate workforce. Jeez.
Yeah, we need.
Why
I
don't
was
we
just talking to John, Peter Sterling yesterday.
Okay. This is 100,000, and this is a new program. It looks like this is new. 100,000 is new.
This, I mean, it's new, specific climate focused work that Advance Vermont, does in its capacity is publicizing educational credentialing workforce opportunities. So this came in as, I think originally this was a $750,000 ask, if I remember correctly, and was significantly scaled back to just be the 2 items, the centralized information and then the video and media series for 100,000. So it's basically targeting students and employers and prospective employees about climate workforce opportunities. It's a media campaign, Advance Vermont.
And
State college or?
And it's through VSAC. If it sounds like marketing, it seems like it almost should go, if we funded it through ACCD.
VSAC is just the intermediary for these different Advanced Vermont initiatives. So originally, nobody wanted to say Advanced Vermont in the bills. And so the money was going to VSAC, and now we've set up this construct where it's VSAC for sub-grant to Advanced Vermont.
I'm just saying, is VSAC the appropriate intermediary? It seems like if we funded it, the home is more within ACCD.
Doesn't matter, it's just a pass through, but.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the question is, who would be looking at the program, how you measure the impact, what is, how does that fit with other efforts to recruit workers that are being funded through a variety of paths. But that's, so this new thing on work climate is new. Okay. Sustainable jobs.
So
Expand its business coaching. That's new.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah, sustainable.
business coaching?
Mhm. Well, we have a lot of business coaching, for example, I'm back to the HCB, the ag viability, they coach and do a lot of business planning with small, but that's not this. I'm just saying this is something new. I don't,
That part. So
This is
most all
part of the
this is
climate.
general fund.
Yeah, there's the 10 and
It's-
11 go
it's-
together.
It's,
well,
it focuses on adopting climate-centered mission and working with tradespersons looking to start their own climate-centered. So it's really business coaching for climate-centered businesses.
You're talking about 11 or 12?
she's.
Oh, you
Yeah.
They do relate to one another.
Well, they both relate to climate, I suppose that's the connection. All right, we are making a decision, this is, shall recruit up to 12 companies, a cohort of up to 12 trained tradespeople to receive advanced business assistance to enable them to pivot or start, I don't know, is that methane production? I don't know.
This sounds like they have a program called Delta Climb that they do, like a business development program. That's what it's.
I mean, isn't this pretty prescriptive? What, I don't know. All right, but we haven't decided we're gonna fund it, so let's not. Next is section 12.
That's 2.5 million.
And that's the one that they,
The tuition free,
that's the one they,
Actually, option eight.
$5,000 to stay in Vermont for 2 years after graduation.
is that the one Bill had the
Yes,
comment about?
he would switch over to the.
As compared to the,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's the
I
question.
think that'd be a longer commitment than 2 years.
I just want to note that it's the UVM Office of Engagement that's administering it, but it's available to all post-secondary students, not just UVM students. And this was a program that you created or authorized and funded last year in Act 183.
Did
So
we
this is
fund it
additional
with
work.
federal money, ARPA? I bet we did.
It's a good question. I don't remember.
Okay, that's part of what you're concerned about. Okay. All right.
I try to immediately forget the bills as soon as the session ends.
I don't, probably good for your mental health. Section 13. This is restorative justice, and this is the 500 out of the 700 that the state college system requested to start up this new program. Okay. Now, I have to say, that's the kind of language we like.
Short, sweet.
Yeah, you're
Agree.
appropriated to do this.
Number 14, section 14 has no money.
It's a study.
No, this,
Why are we studying them again?
actually, there was, the language that came in from the House would have a requirement even for private institutions of higher education to calibrate their coursework with that curriculum development at the Vermont Criminal Justice, the training.
State Police Academy?
Yeah, and my question is, and we did get some revised language that has been worked out between the Vermont State Colleges and Susan Seitley of the independent colleges. If we want to put this in, my question is one of timing, because they have on and before January 15th of 2024, the Criminal Justice Council, they'll calibrate. And too early, if you've
Yeah.
got 3 years, if you're doing curriculum development, how would you expect the colleges to respond to a curriculum that hasn't even been completed? So I don't know whether we
The
should
state
even.
colleges and the independent colleges after that this morning said they were okay with not having this language in.
Well, I wrote them back and said, do you really need this language? And I've got a real problem with the date, because
Yeah,
we've got a 3-year work product here and a date that doesn't even sync with it. So maybe we should just get rid of it. I would
well,
think
that's
that,
my suggestion.
okay. All right, okay. Now this is, oh my gosh. Now this, you can see, they just lifted all the language from the description of what this program would be. And maybe, if we want to fund it, we should stop at a Vermont period
University period.
and period. And I don't think we need all this. Attract diverse learners, foster interest. I think this is the description in the sales pitch that the state colleges provided for the funding. So we'll hold this funding request, but if we do it, I would suggest we simply put a period after the first sentence and get rid of the which will and all the rest of it.
It's gotta be, would you keep the offer as a full-time 6-week intensive residential summer program?
I don't even know if I would, just to establish a certificate in 3D technology program at a Vermont State University. I don't care if it's,
Well, that's right too, because there's no longer a Vermont State College as July 1, right?
that's true, but at the time we're writing this, that's what they are. I don't think we need to say offered as a full-time 6 weeks intensive residential summer program. We might want a fall program.
Sounds like a prison to me.
So, I think we would just, to the state colleges to establish a 3D technology program, period,
Fine with me,
if we do it.
if we do.
Okay.
And if we do a total of 1.5 million.
The next one is, state
Same idea.
colleges, critical occupation.
The only question I would have here is did we do it last time in Act 183? Did we have the $75,000 household income criterion? And what, if any, administrative work is done by the state college to determine that?
Well, they have the FAFSAs, right? Don't they have their FAFSAs?
Oh, yeah, they can use that.
Yeah.
Did they do it last time? I guess so.
I don't know.
That's what they do for the two
They
opportunities.
do it, BSAC does that.
So is the language all right? Or are
It's
you
okay,
suggesting?
no, I'm not suggesting any change, I was just curious.
Now, Upskill Vermont, they got rid of the ups, but we're talking about maybe, that would be the area that we would want to find.
Upskilling it.
So, the language is there if we want.
75,000 is the heck of a lot for that
No,
need.
no.
Might even be more. I would support more in that section and less than some others.
You mean in terms of higher income for eligible?
Yes,
This is the household, this is who
I
qualifies.
understand.
You're talking about,
I'm not talking about adding 3.8, I'm talking about making it.
so you want to
If we
raise.
can get
the-
somebody with $100,000 income who wants to be an EMS person or wants to work for
And
a
a
Department of Mental
critical
Health, geez, I think we should take advantage of that.
That's why I asked the question, because I didn't know whether we had that criterion in last time.
Well-
These are
Okay,
Well,
really
we'll check,
critical.
if
We'll
the
check,
previous
we'll check.
iterations of critical occupations had an income level.
And I think if there's some flexibility, it says or less enrolled education.
what,
I don't know what that means.
or what, where's the or,
I
what
don't
line?
think- It's
Page
after
18,
75, I don't know what that means.
And-
Oh, the or is on the
Gotta
first,
go up.
or less enrolled education,
Yeah, less.
no, that, or less means the 75,000 or
Or
less enrolled, and then, so, all right, we can come back to that if we decide to put some money there. The trades program,
That was,
I don't know.
No, that's in the
oh, that's
base.
in there. Let's see, section 17 was, so
Uh-huh,
a skilled Vermont.
right,
With the other one, you don't, you actually have that same language in the body of the budget bill, you don't, need
this,
it. Yeah, on the trades for VSAC. It's,
so all we need,
you don't need to have it in the back of the bill with this,
so do we need this language with the $1,000?
you have it essentially, you've now embedded it into the VSAC
Okay,
section of the
so we
budget bill.
can just delete it?
Is that a new program?
No,
No.
no. And the trades are really important because a lot of people, those certificates are, actually a plumber and electrician probably earns more than
A lot of us need them more.
It's hard to find.
They're hard to find now.
All right, this is the Vermont Training Program. And so this is to procure incentives in accordance with creating helpful incentives to produce semiconductors. This is CHIP. So I guess is this the way it's written, then its use is to fulfill. In other words, this is not just a discretionary pot of money.
That's correct. And again, I think I said earlier that they're not entirely sure what the number is going to be or what it will leverage. There was discussion in Senate Economic Development whether to have a contingency that would, say this money should go somewhere else in the event it's not spent, but the agency couldn't confirm what an appropriate date or timeline would be before they would know. So basically everybody decided if it's not spent by budget adjustment next year, you'll just take it back, but hopefully it will be. There's supposed to be, right now, prospectively, up to 3 companies are gonna be applying for CHIPS funding. And the dollar figure that I heard,
3 in Vermont.
yep, and the agency suggested as much as $500 million in federal funding.
Okay, my goodness.
I like that.
We like that. So as long as it's clear that this is being appropriated to leverage the federal funds from this act, then I don't think the language needs to be changed. The question is coming back to, this is going to be on our list for funding. So, okay. This is, boy, this is now another grant to advance Vermont. And this is 20, section 20 in the language.
Public-private partnership.
Do we have a report from last year's funding that people have looked at before? Just keep going?
That's what happens.
Oh, my question is did the committee get a report? Do we have this report? Was it asked for so that we were supposed to get one in December of 2022 for last year's funding?
It is in the underlying, so this is a truncated version of the language that you used last year in Act 183. And that called for a December 15th, 2022 report.
So there is one.
There should be one floating around. This advances the date
Oh, I
and
understand
provides
that.
additional money to keep doing the work for 70 by 25.
My only point is if you're making a decision to continue it,
Sure.
we ought to look at the report to see what the funding has produced. That's all. And maybe,
They recognize it as,
do you know that they,
submit a report on December 15th.
they did? Okay.
that's the second.
And did the Economic Development Committee look at that report?
I didn't catch that.
I don't know.
Okay.
They report, I can tell you that they reported in Senate Education that was on about this program in the past.
Well, Stephanie said they did send a report in December. All right, let's keep going. Working bridges, that's again. That's new. But it's mercifully short. You asked for it, we're giving it to you. Now, this is the Vermont Psychiatric Mental Health. Why would you not, why do you need mental health? I would think a psychiatric nurse.
It's an advanced practice nurse.
Wherever they're working.
No, why do you need mental health? Why not a Vermont psychiatric nurse? Wouldn't mental health be embedded in psychiatric?
It is a psychiatric.
No, she's saying it's repetitive to say
I think, isn't it
psychiatric and
redundant?
mental.
Do you need to have mental health after psychiatric?
That's what they call the physician.
Yeah. Who is they?
I don't remember the source of the literature I looked at, but I did look at some. Because initially this came in as a proposal to set up a new program at UVN, and I thought that was redundant in a curious phrasing as well. But
Yeah.
that's how they phrased it.
Okay.
I can look again.
No, don't bother you. You have the same kind of, it
Yes.
seems like it's redundant, but.
Again, they've got all the language,
It's a lot.
a lot of language there that should be helpful, apparently.
Yes, this isn't nowhere.
It is a new program. It's the exact same construct as all those other professions, but this one's specific to psychiatric.
Jay, but is there anything on lawyers? That's a serious question because.
Or how about
we
legislators?
have a tremendous shortage of lawyers. in this.
Do we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do.
I didn't
You
know that.
weren't aware of
I
that?
didn't
No.
either.
God, they're everywhere.
We're all been blessed.
Not if you're looking for a defender general.
No.
Courtroom lawyers.
A public defender, a state's attorney,
Family law.
Family law. something in that area, you are very, it's difficult to find. The defender general will tell you that he's having a more and more difficult time.
PhD psychologist.
We know they aren't here, right?
Do you, okay, so this is new.
Yes.
And my question is there language that, are we creating different criteria for this group of professions with their loan, forgivable loan? Or if it's parallel, then why don't we, I don't know, use the same,
Language. for all.
the same criteria for eligibility across all these forgivable loans as they get into health
Good idea.
careers? I don't, it just seems like,
So, and this one is administered through the Department of Health with
no, it needs to
incorporation.
be SAC.
Department of Health in collaboration with the corporation.
Oh, yeah, it's administered by, where's Shayla when we need her? Huh?
She'll be back tomorrow morning.
All right, so that's a new program. I'm just trying to,
Well, there's another psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner is the next one.
That's the appropriation.
Oh, that's all you need.
Yeah.
well, maybe.
Strike section 22 and
Well, and the requirement for work for 1 year minimum following licensure for each year of forgivable.
But shouldn't that be the criteria?
No,
for
that should
every-
be kind of the basic. I agree.
I just want to harmonize the requirements for these forgivable loan.
Yeah, I hear you. It really started down this path last year
Yeah.
in 183. There were about 4 or 5 of these set up. There were slight variations depending on the type of degree, obviously different professions. And then if you're in different titles, because it's health, education, something else. So
My
what I
question,
understand is a proliferation,
okay,
redundancy.
yeah, it just seems like we ought to have the same requirements across these health professions. I mean, you know, it just seems like, you know, on what basis would you say the rules should be different for one versus another relative to years of service or whatever? That's, so maybe if we end up funding these, we need to take a look at having some kind of consistent eligibility requirements that are uniform, regardless of whether it's a psychiatric mental health nurse or a regular nurse or dental hygienist, or I don't know. I mean, we've got teachers, we've got, it's awfully awfully ad hoc. We keep adding professions. Lawyers, I think Senator Sears is right, should be added.
And I also note that the critical occupations language in section 16 had the household income of 75,000 or less. And this one has no,
That's a
That's, the critical occupations is a tuition-based,
And this is,
that's by at via Vermont State Colleges.
but this is,
yeah, but this has no household income
This has no
requirement either.
household income.
no,
right.
this is a grant program with
Right.
no, so I guess the question is, should there be,
Household income.
I don't know.
I would say none on any, but that's,
Yeah.
but, you know, if you're gonna do it, I think I'm agreeing with you, Madam Chair, that if you're going to do these things, you should be consistent throughout.
Well, if somebody could, I don't know who, but if we could just take these sections and look at the occupation, the profession, and then what is the criteria? Is it 2 years? Is there an income test? Yes, no, 75,000, I don't know.
No and no. It's the exact same language. It just changes the profession.
Is that the same? That's, you've
No,
answered,
it's not.
Yeah,
It is for all of the forgivable loan incentive programs.
Oh, forgivable loans, the other ones are.
So
So
it-
all we can do is
it's
one
not-
template and then say X number for this and X number for that.
It's not inconsistent, it's somewhat redundant.
That's
because
what I'm
you're-
talking about.
Saying the same thing
Right.
over and over.
So
again.
we could actually have something that is kind of a generic forgivable loan for health occupations, what the criteria is, and then say X amount for this and X amount for that.
Yeah, we get to,
You could do
That's
it that
what I
way,
think.
you're gonna have to parse it out one way or the other, because every year if you get, how much you're gonna appropriate for the dental hygienist portion of that
You know
program.
something, when I contemplate the future, I'm not sure that we're gonna be able to be giving out all this one-time money.
Money that
As soon as the economy goes down, we're not gonna be.
No, so we're kind of feeling like Santa Claus right now, but, next year might be the Grinch.
This one only has 40 million, my housing bill has 120.
I thought it was 90.
Well, the house did some more work.
And we
they're
have,
spending money after they pass their
they
budget.
have no money. They have no money.
I don't know how you do that.
They have no money. They've spent everything they had
And more.
and more,
and mortgage the house side of this building, right?
and didn't
Yeah,
fund the
the-
IIJA batch and a few other things. So, maybe we could just think about collapsing the eligibility if it's consistent across and have kind of a generic and then what we're funding for each of the,
I can do it that way,
Choice
to do
of-
that, I'm gonna have to repeal 4 or 5 sections of other law and then consolidate about 4 sections in this bill. So it's totally doable, and I take your point and I agree with it, and I think nobody probably envisioned that there would be 9 different forgivable loan incentive programs originally. It's just sort of ballooned.
One you should have.
And I can
So if
definitely
you
work that out.
did one language piece,
but,
covered them all.
but
then
because
this
we've
was-
done this ad hoc,
Right.
then we've got scattered throughout, it's session law, right?
No, they're codified in Title 18, so right
They're
now,
actually codified,
if
we're using one time.
you pass this bill, then you have, I think it's 18 VSA, sections 34 through 41 are each a different profession that has the forgivable loan incentive program. I'm not trying to give you heartburn, Madam Chair, I'm really not.
But you wrote
Why don't
out.
we
I did
add-
not, that's the irony, I don't even work on healthcare.
Why don't we give him a job for?
I think it's Senator Lyons who's inflicted
Okay,
his
now
injury on me.
But sure.
I guess, I don't know, I think we're gonna have to go in at some point, because we're not gonna be able to fund all this stuff we've created.
So eventually we won't be able to fund all this stuff.
Yeah,
And
probably.
right, so
You can make that an
right
assignment
now,
or something.
they're there, and so I can see within the next 3 or 4 years, some of these are gonna drop off.
So-
If we do it all now, it's
All right, so
Heavy
look,
lifting
we're
for-
getting close to when we wanna get out of Dodge, so maybe it's something that we can do over the summer, to get it.
We could have a working group,
Yeah.
Yeah, with at least 10 legislators.
and the commissioner and department.
Be
planning.
geographically located.
Only if it's codified.
All right, well, let's keep going. The same language, 25, now this is the nursing forgivable loan.
I look at 24, don't you like that one?
I do, I said I like that, that's pretty straightforward.
yes.
I believe that was just added to the base funding at this point, right? Yeah. So, 25 is the last year's 18 VSA section 34, you're adding additional 3 million total to the nursing forgivable loan incentive program. You see the breakdown of
These are global commitment funds.
Yeah, that's why they're split from the general fund. All right,
26 is the second of that 3-year position you authorized last year. Now, 27 is different. It's modeled on last year's designated agency, specialized service agency program, but it's different in that it applies to all full-time equivalent employees of the agencies for student loan repayment or tuition assistance.
The question is around the FTP language. And should that be added? We heard from the Vermont
Put that on
Right.
library, Bobby.
The other one was in for this one is,
Well, probably the car warranty's running out.
Who's calling you again?
This is the one, the agency
Mhm,
is, we're, all right,
mhm.
if we do this, we're gonna have to rejigger the language, because, who's gonna be responsible? And giving them the responsibility, the one person, staff of one said this was just an impossible.
The auditor.
This has been very successful, the program, so
How do you know that?
just from here, just taking testimony from the perspective of the DAs, this has been successful. They've had a 94% retention rate over their previous
From grant recipients,
65%.
for just from the grant. 94 retention for
Yeah.
people that have actually.
I think the question is who's administering.
Yeah, that's it.
Right, yeah, that is, yeah.
So, let's see if they at least gave both the House and the Senate. I guess they do. On page 25, both the House and Senate.
Yeah.
Shall make a presentation available. I love that, rather than a written report that nobody's gonna read. Howard. This is low repayment and tuition assistance funds. So it's both.
Ordinary yourself.
Student, it's either tuition or loan repayment in this case, so it's a little bit different. Now we have the dental hygienist.
All the language again.
Okay.
Done this
Um,
for years.
I know, why can't, I don't,
Now you're putting, this is adding it new to the code, right?
Yes.
That's 43 million, well, 43,000.
what page are you on?
Page 28.
28.
That's a small amount.
what about
43,000?
section 40?
In the budget, this has been built into the base. It's a Medicaid dollar, so it's $100,000 gross. The 43,000 here reflects the match.
100,000 is still small.
You don't need that money.
Lord, forgive
Yeah.
us.
For the budget.
Okay, all right, let's keep going.
All right.
This is small business technical exchange. We're creating something new through the RDCs. An exchange or award of not more from approved providers. So this is new.
A new codification and general fund support for an existing activity the RDCs have been undertaking during COVID. So in that respect, yes, it's new, but it is a continuation of existing practice.
Okay, and was this in the governor's?
No,
No. So this is a continuation and it would be new to the general fund.
And new to the statutes. 10 VSA section 2.
Um,
Are these actually written in the green books?
This one would be.
yeah, all of this. This is,
No wonder they're so heavy.
it's like, well, we could, that's what I asked. This is all green book. It's not section law. I mean, through grants to providers for including digital
Not more than
services, architecture,
$5,000.
reconfiguring.
Yeah, the grants are not more than $5,000. They're done by the regional development corporations.
The exchange. And so the technical services would be provided
Approved providers. Whatever.
And which is a
Who by
variation.
whom?
No, but this is another example of something new being created or
Yeah.
put in, formalized that is in the business of advising businesses.
Yeah.
So this is kind of, as I'm
Who's the
saying,
approved- Do we have a list
Well-
of approved providers?
well, my point is, though, we've got business assistants embedded in a variety of different places. Everybody wants to give business assistance. So the question is, how many different ways and how many different entities do we want to fund business assistance?
Well, this is through the regional commission.
I understand that, and they're established and they're well-known, so,
Yeah.
you know,
Are they
We already
are
have,
they business navigators?
I don't know. Yes, they are.
yeah, they help you if you call them.
Okay, so
Why do this? one?
they get a grant, but the exchange so award technical assistance grants are not more than 5,000
It just comes in the
Well,
RDCs.
but there's also,
for technical services from approved providers. That's lines 18 and 19 on page 29.
And on 13, it says the RDCs will maintain a directory of and build connections to Vermont technical assistance providers. And because you need assistance to navigate them, because we've added so damn many, we don't know where they are.
so it's a total of 1.25 million on page 31.
Yeah,
Yeah. And $5,000 per.
but there's 5,000 per business.
Outfit, yeah.
So it's a lot of businesses.
I'm wondering,
Although, maybe you pay I'm sure that the regional commissions are getting paid something to do their job.
and
Well,
pay
you gotta
administrative.
keep them-
Then you have the administrator within the agency, so you get 1% for them.
You gotta get things really complicated and then you can get a business.
just-
assistant.
You're eligible for $5,000, Bob. You can check your business.
I can handle it. No, meeting.
The only thing that I'm saying here is this is creating another new program with one-time money. And that's the big question. If you're gonna put in money for this, you're gonna hire navigators, et cetera. Is this really, and create an exchange? This hardly seems like a
You'll have
one-off.
a list of who the business navigators are.
Well, yeah, then we're gonna
For
fund
your
it.
1.2 million, that's what you'll get.
Yeah, but you're, if we can't fund this next year, we've
Right.
created something that, on top of what we have in place, should we simply give the RDCs a little bit more money?
I think so.
Wouldn't it be a little easier and
That
just,
would be easier for me.
Let them do what they're already doing.
but not prescribe all this?
I know, it's a lot of,
Um, I realize we're looking at this maybe in a different way, but I'm inclined to say, if we're gonna do something, then perhaps make it a little less prescriptive and do a one-time grant to the RDCs to, support the development or, because they do a lot,
business
certainly.
assistants.
Yeah,
small
businesses,
businesses.
yeah,
Well, then the definition of who
all that goes.
participates in the
That goes.
business, who the
No,
people are.
No, I would get rid of this whole thing. I wouldn't create an exchange. I would simply give our RDCs some one-time money to, for the, services they provide, to businesses and their districts.
And I trying to remember if Act 183, and maybe David will remember, that it was a blanket language about ensuring some equity, inclusiveness within that or not.
My biggest,
Because then we could scratch all this language and.
I agree with everything.
Well, I think
I really do.
we should, I am very reluctant to create an exchange and get this prescriptive when we know that probably, unless the world is gonna be different than we think it is, we can't continue it. So I'd much rather, we have RDCs in existence, give them some money and general parameters around how we'd like to use it, but in a more one-time way.
Yeah.
The minute you're hiring navigators, the more you're doing this, the more we're gonna have ongoing demand for support. And particularly if we're putting a one-off in the statute.
Well, yeah, it's intended to be ongoing because you're putting it in the
And
law.
the sad part of it is, these small businesses are busy doing their work. They don't have time. They do seminars and meetings all day. I mean,
Well, some of them have to.
you have to earn your money.
Plumbers and electricians have to be
I
certified.
agree with the chair.
Okay, so I think
I agree.
we, thank you.
all agree.
Put whatever we can into the RDCs and help them out.
And
If they
obviously,
wanna buy business navigators, they can.
and I think that we should, have,
Excuse me.
obviously with the, if we want to have the, what they shall do, as well as making sure that they're providing assistance for certain populations, which is on page 30, that gets into the, which frankly,
Have we got the right group? I just wanna make sure that my RDC and industrial corporation are together, so I'm thinking that you have your industrial corporations, which would be more business than I'm.
GBIC, like in Burlington.
Yeah,
PIC is both, and,
in Bennington, they're together, so it doesn't matter.
but there's 12.
And in our region, the RPC and the RDC are one,
Yeah, that's the same in ours,
and that works really well.
but I don't know if you're. Yeah.
Ours, in ours, it's not.
Well, the appropriation is
To the
to
RDC.
the RDCs.
Yeah.
So I'm not changing that, I'm
And
just,
there's
Okay.
12.
You have just the boards that would go with the money. when it's
yeah,
in the-
that's it.
I want to ask, the health department's okay with the 400, do you want to switch back to H22 and vote it out? We have amendments and it can get up to the Senate.
Yeah, sure.
So it's not,
So
it's
that
it's the
covers-
most recent amendment with the
That's what we
400 in it, not the one that was a few minutes ago.
That covers the request that we had. done
Yes.
already.
Yes,
Okay, that's good. I'm with it.
so I think we only need a couple copies of the amendment.
We're changing horses.
For a moment,
Just
won't take long.
I didn't believe it.
almost done.
All right.
We're almost done, we can get through this, if we ditch the rest of the grants.
I guess maybe we're gonna, it's been a long afternoon, if we do 222, it's gonna be 5. I
I'm
don't-
good with section 31.
It's
That
31.
must be in Bennington.
No, that's the Arts Council, I'm in
I'm
favor of the
definitely
arts.
for that. Yes. I
Yes, we almost have a bill.
have art.
Anybody standing up against the arts.
Okay. So, the amendment here is, we have copies for everybody, we can share. So we're, doing the things that we talked about, and that is,
I'll give you page 2.
so inserting the phrase "or southern" after eastern and striking out between the Northeast Kingdom and Brattleboro. So creating a
Okay.
work or southern.
Eastern or southern.
I'm just wondering,
No,
and striking out between the Brattleboro. So they're creating really an eastern and southern. But what about
Western.
Addison and
That's
Well, that's still,
that's still in, right?
So Bennington's still out of it.
No,
Southern.
southern. You're in the
No, it's
southern.
southern. It's
Oh.
no, it's a
So it'd be back Brattleboro, Bennington.
satellite locations established pursuant to subdivision 2 should be located in Addison County, eastern Vermont. Wait,
I don't know.
Southern.
It's too late to fight about it.
southern.
Yeah, it does, it gets rid of eastern, Northeast Kingdom and Brattleboro, and
Oh,
simply
okay.
does southern and eastern,
Then
and Addison and Chittenden.
Oh, okay.
All right.
That's fine.
Must be your broker, Bobby.
No, I,
No, he's getting business assistance.
His truck taxes are gonna be so high, he's gonna need a business.
And then we've got, it is the intent of the General Assembly that the positions referenced in the subdivision 3 shall be funded annually by the opioid abatement special fund unless and until the special fund does not have sufficient expenditures for this expenditure. Okay, we can always modify that later. And then the 240 is up to 400.
Good to me.
Okay.
I'll move to amend.
Okay, all right, so we have a motion to move the amendment favorably, second? Second. Okay, all right, and our clerk will call the roll.
Let's see.
Did you call my name?
Lyons.
Yes.
Kirchler.
Yes.
Sears.
Yeah.
Westman's, yes. Kittle.
Yes.
Uh-oh, 5-0.
And Ginny, do you want to report that? as,
Sure. I'll do my best to recognize that.
I know, but,
Thank you.
okay, so now I need a motion to move the bill favorably as amended.
So moved.
All right, Senator Sears.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Senator Burgess.
Got both sides of the table.
Eastern and Western.
Yeah.
No, you're Southern, sorry.
Southern.
I'm northern right now. I was about to.
I don't even know where I am.
I wonder if they're still upstairs. They haven't posted.
They know
No,
it's
they
coming.
don't,
They
they
know
know.
it's
Coming
coming.
right
And, oh, here's Bobby.
You want to vote on this?
Bobby wants to vote yes. This is on
Thank you.
222. It's the amendments that we
Yeah.
wanted to make about the,
Yeah, that's changes.
yeah.
This is the bill as amended, Senator Lyons. Esler,
Yes.
Sears,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
yes. And the reporter will be Senator Lyons. So our vote is 601.
Everyone would know that it's.
Yeah. I hate to do this to you, but David's here. We're gonna crank through the rest of this language. I'm sorry, but Friday is coming shortly, so we're gonna have to.
maybe we can find somebody in the morning.
All right, so we're on brownfields, I think. Is that where you had us, David?
Yes.
32 brownfields, bottom of page 31. Now, this is where assessment, remediation, and redevelopment.
This is where the.
And this is making sure that the RPCs get some of this money, right? For the assessment, is there something that talks about that?
You know, the second half, starting on page 32, line 3, specifically provides that
$1 million.
ACCD will give
Yeah,
$1 million
that's great.
to the
Yeah,
RPC. So,
Mhm.
so these two pieces don't spend new money. They're talking about the money appropriated in this fiscal year. And section 33 is actually a change to Maryland Act statute. Increase the maximum site deviation value from 200 to 500. So do with that what you will.
So this is
33 is.
This is appropriated in 24.
We have $8 million. I don't know why it's 10 at the beginning of this, but we have $8 million in this bill right now
Okay,
structured for it. And that was the same amount that the House had in the end.
all right, so we'll just have to correct that number. Okay. All right, that's what I was.
Yeah. So there was money in 23, there was money in 22, and now there's money in 24.
And this isn't.
What?
This isn't the budget language you're actually gonna be using. This is just
We'll
it's
have.
just a tool for understanding how this has evolved in each step in the process.
All right, I believe you. I'm into the realm of cosmic trust.
Well, I'm just relying on Steph, so we can all trust her.
All right,
So in that vein, I mean, we can skip 33 unless you really want to talk about it.
no, I think we probably don't. It's just increasing the grant up to $500,000 for remediation. Some of these sites I know are pretty expensive.
Yes.
Okay, 34. This is the relocation.
Just a slight change to the program language itself to specifically provide that you have to submit your application before you become a resident of the state. The Senate Economic Development on page 35 actually adds $2 million to this program, which is not included in the House budget.
2 million, you said?
2 million.
I thought we already did this.
Well, no, we've done it in the past. The House did not fund anything for this. The governor,
Yeah.
$4 million.
So the House had none, and our economic development people are recommending 2. So this is what they're putting
So it's
in.
half of what the governor.
But we haven't approved it yet. I mean, this is on our list. So they put it back in. Did we create this in statute too?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, you've got your work cut out in the summer, because this needs to be,
You could appropriate me $12 for a box of nice red pens. I will go to work.
I will. Remind me, Stephanie. I'll have to get them from
James gonna get a
Vince.
box of red pens in the mail.
Vince and Lucy used to mark up everything with
Red
red
pens,
pens.
yeah.
All right, so now we're down to,
Pushes.
So the section 34A is just on the wrong side of the reader assist, but now you're down to 35.
35. And,
This is just one program change for the community recovery and revitalization. grant
although we
program.
may have some language we want to put in, because we still have some unexpended money, and this would give a little more flexibility in its use. So now we're on to 36, and this is a new program.
Mhm. A new program, Title 10, Section 6.
What page are you on, Dave?
Oh, we're on the top of
36.
page 36.
Oh, okay, 'cause I don't see a section 10.
Well, it's way at the bottom of 35,
Oh.
I think.
Thank you.
Section 36, 10 is.
So this is new.
Oh, Rural Industry
Oh, I
Development
thought you
Grant Fund.
described this as.
Okay.
Fund. Looks like it's a grant fund. Structured.
Got a
So matching requirement, it can be used for matching requirement for another state, so we're using state money to match the state. On the bottom of 37. This is to purchase land for potential industrial use. It seems to me that this should not be codified.
It's,
It should just be, we're creating something new. I don't think we're gonna be able to go out and purchase money for industrial, the money to purchase industrial parks as a routine practice. I think it should be session law at this point, if we
But-
fund it.
On the bottom, on line 20 of page 37, I suspect it means matching requirement of another state or federal grant consistent if you add something on the border. Like in Bennington, New York, there's a trucking corporation. that
Oh,
is
you're talking about
exactly
another state
right on-
grant.
Oh, you're talking about another state geographically. I was
Yeah.
thinking of a state of Vermont grant
No.
when I read it.
who is,
I
Well,
was
maybe it
thinking-
is, I don't know. Is
It
it-
is, capital S means Vermont, so.
So another state of Vermont grant, like
Matching.
Anita.
So we're using state dollars to match a
State dollars.
state matching requirement.
Once the money goes to the LDCs, it lives in a special fund, and if that's how they choose to use it, this is the proposal that came from.
Okay,
the
so
administration.
this, you were right.
You can also use
But
it.
it's
I was
kind of
right
odd.
about the applied income and.
Yeah, I know,
personal
but
use allowance.
you're right about state, but it's kind of odd that
it's
you use
allowing,
state funds to match state funds.
It is rather unusual.
and
Also, for the equity investment requirement for a VITA loan through its industrial development program, so not quite the same, but comparable.
this is within ACCD
So
for
things
business
like
relocation
JP.
expansion. Is this, what is this, a business cookie jar here?
Yeah, that's quite frankly, I'm a little worried about this.
Yeah,
Because I think it's ripe for corruption.
it's for the,
Oh, you do?
I really do.
Yeah.
the money is the ACCD and the special fund that's created in the statute, but the recipients are the local development corporations.
So
which
we're
have to be
gonna
a-
create a special fund.
if you pass this bill.
I thought we were trying to get rid of special funds.
No special.
I thought it was more of a small one.
I sent a list of special funds right here that's.
All right. So this is taking a new proposal. All right, so this is, if we do it, we have to come back and revisit all of this language.
$4 million.
I see why Michael.
The governor has.
decided to
The governor had 10 and the House had 5.
And the Senate
Senate
Economic Development Committee is saying 4.
They just have an idea of where this investment is going.
Well, I think they were talking about maybe Canadian border. I don't know.
That was the description that we got.
I heard they got a hole.
It was likely to be where you had within a day's drive back and forth.
growing wonderful.
All right, we're gonna move on because we're getting into the merits of the request or how this is gonna stack up. So there's 4 million. You asked for 10, we give you 5 and we'll lower you 1, give you 4. Is that,
That's a good deal. I'd swap all day at that.
all right, here's Better Places. Dick. Sometimes I will.
We're heading to a better place.
This is Senator Sears' birthday. This is your birthday.
No, is this,
I
no,
thought
it's
your-
not today.
I thought your birthday
No,
was
I got
this
4
weekend.
days left to my 70s.
Is the only change?
No, I mean, Better
There's
Places,
grants
I'm
for
looking at
municipality in the
funerals.
You're
And
looking at it.
cemetery.
As being a better place?
Better place, me, you know.
That just like right beyond. Oh, my God.
Great beyond.
That's not-
I don't think it means,
All
I
right.
mean, it's an economic development program.
All right, let's go back to section 38. And what are you doing here?
You're increasing the number of projects that can occur in a single municipality in a year from 1 to 3.
And it took all this language?
There were other things going on, and this is where they ended up, so.
And the board, we have a board here.
We're done.
What board is this?
So this is all these next few sections on the downtown, this is for the state board that approves the designated downtown. And each different designated area has its own section, so they had to make the change in all the different places.
No, so we created a board here.
Well, it's already been created, I guess.
I know, but what's the name of the board? The Better Places Board, the Crowd Creating Board, the.
No, these are separate, so the Better Places is through DHCD, the board is referring to the downtown board.
Okay, that's all I was wanting to know was the board.
Yes.
All right,
So
so
39, 40, 41,
There's no
42,
money here.
43, non-money, just buying a little more time for when they have to act on an application for a designation.
all right,
And then we move to simplifying government.
The one-stop portal.
It's a plan for simplifying the portal.
There's a plan to simplify government.
Was
We
this
have a
request
study
about-
committee
was
that
this, where did Adam go? Did he call it a day?
he left.
How can he? We haven't left yet. What, was there a plan? Is there a description of this?
This is the Secretary of State's one-stop business portal, as you can see on page 44. This has been on the books since 2018, 19. House of Commerce wanted to revitalize it. They put ADS in charge of the steering committee that's still tasked with coming back with a plan for making this happen.
Since 18, they've been working on a plan.
No
Let
appropriations.
them introduce the bill.
I want to get on that table.
this is, what they did is plunk everything in the bill regardless of whether it has.
Yeah.
So my question, begins, well, first of all, if we're talking about this portal at the Secretary of State's office, have we preempted the Secretary of State and put the ADS, agency secretary, in charge?
My understanding is the Secretary of State's office does not want to be the chair of the steering committee.
I think we should take all this out and let them, it's in the House budget, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Should negotiate that.
All right, why don't we do that? Oh, they want to implement component. All right. My question is it possible to just add some of this stuff without all the other statutory language? Is this in statute too? No, acts and results. We'll have to decide whether we
Year
want to
in.
keep it in here. Now we're back to 44A. And this is money to the Department of Labor.
This is our version.
This is all COVID money, right?
Yeah.
It didn't get spent.
Well, this is general
No,
fund
this is
money,
general fund
but
here.
that they thought they could reallocate 1.2
Oh,
of, but
oh.
cannot, so we can't do what's on line 13 through 15.
Oh, because,
But we are funding the 1 and 2. According to the
The one
Senate Economic Development. That will end up in the, those are already in the B11 section
so
of the
do we
bill.
not need 44A is
You
what
don't need 44A, and we cannot do what is in lines 13 to 15.
So that's out.
All right, so, all right, well, that's easy. And what we're getting down, COVID-related pay. And,
This is where the money was freed up, that part of it went to the bridge money for VSAC and the state colleges, and part of it is paying for healthy homes.
so,
And we have another program to revert from ARPA as well.
okay, so we need this
We need
in order to free up the money that we're spending.
to actually take the money back.
Uh-huh. But does it talk about a reversion?
So it's changing the amount from 15 to 5,
Yeah, so in here,
And
and that
that's
is
the change.
Okay,
but we need to have
We
a
need-
section that does a
okay, all
reversion
right.
as well. as the-
either regardless of how we
Yeah.
need to free it up. And that gets us to the end?
Made it the whole way.
Well,
Relatively painless.
we have an awful pile of very painful stuff left over.
Now we can figure out how much of it, we're gonna fund in the end.
Right now, or
No, not now, I don't
We
think.
don't have 10 or 15, do you want to do cash fund for 10
Yes,
or 15 minutes?
I do, I do wanna, roll that out to the committee, and I guess David is free from the torture.
I need the box of red pens.
Let me know when that attorney loan forgiveness, comes around. I still owe VSAC money, so.
There's no forgiving the attorney.
You're not even
with this
gonna
together.
get paid off before you're paying tuition on your kids.
Oh, I know.
That's a real sad thing.
It's
Talk
hard.
about
That
intergenerational
is-
transfers.
Come to VSA chapter 13.
You good with me? You'll indulge me one personal note. I am taking my son to Emory University this weekend. I think he's gonna go there, but you are correct. Both my wife and I will continue to pay our own loans when we start signing up for kids.
Emory, that's great.
Emory is awesome.
So we'll see what happens.
Your son isn't that old. How can
He
he be
is.
that old?
He's
He
gonna
was
be
just this
18.
big.
I know.
Oh, wow.
Goes fast.
Oh, wow.
Lovely to be with you all. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, so Stephanie's gonna review with us, what we are, creating here. Actually, we created it last year. This year, we're giving it a new name, and we are, kind of expanding its use.
And then you're getting two things, one's that green and one's that black on it, and we're gonna probably do both in the big bill here. So I'm gonna start with the one that's black.
Yep.
Print. Becky Wasserman drafted this from the sketch I'd done earlier in the week. Okay. You gotta have one that's black and one that's
I
green.
am-
And so this is a restructuring of the cash fund, calling it the cash fund for capital and essential investments.
I got two.
And what this language does is it sets up the cash fund with 3 sub-accounts. The first sub-account is like a capital specific, up to 4%, but no more than 4%, but you don't have to notwithstand if you do less than 4%. Of the structure that we have heard for 2 years, to defray debt. And that sub-account dollars, to the extent that you actually transfer money into the cash fund under that provision, those dollars can only be used for capital projects as defined in here, which is the definition that the institutions committees have been using. So it includes planning and architectural and engineering costs associated with projects. So that's sub-account 1, that's the most restrictive sub-account. The second sub-account is any other money that you transfer in within an actual transfer, a specified transfer. And that can be used for capital expenditures, but other expenditures as well, including transportation expenditures. And that's where we're starting to get the reserve for transportation and also to make 24 balance in the transportation world. And then the third sub-account is basically a supplemental contingent account that we could transfer money into contingently, either at the end of the year for the general fund or for other state special funds. Those can be spent on anything, including setting up the seed capital for revolving loan funds, which we like to, if you decided to do,
The missing middle.
So that's the structure of the fund that you have in the black language. It's different than what came over from the House in our bill, which didn't have the 4%, was entirely capital, didn't have a contingent piece.
We had some fun in terms of how we would name this, but,
And my recommendation is we move this to the C part of the bill and make it effective on passage.
I think that's very advisable.
And we do have spreadsheets on the fund because it's actually starting, you put $25 million into it last year. And so if we switch over to the green packet, this is sort of the session law operational parts of the fund. In the C section, this is the first part, which is they're all C1XX something. But we would set up the reserves within the second bucket of the cash fund. So we would set up the A reserve, which would be 25 million for the transportation IIJ match, and then B, the 14.5 million for not this year's capital bill, but the next year's capital bill for the match for the water projects, water and wastewater projects under IIJA. So that's the first thing you would do in the C section after you amend the fund this way.
And it's really important that administration wanted to have a flat 4%.
Yeah.
And we want to avoid, first of all, if, for example, 4% with the childcare bill, if you had to add 4% of something like that, to go into the capital fund, it adds the cost to anything that you would do. So, and also, we don't want to get into the notwithstanding, issue. So that's why we're using the language that we're talking about, up to a certain amount. And that way you can, and if you had a bad year and there wasn't much, then it's not taking that 4% and saying, in doing that, it means that capital fund would be your top priority out of all the other competing funding needs. So that's to give you some idea of why we're doing it this way. But it also provides a good mechanism to fence off the match money that we need for both transportation and water sewer for the next couple of years, and would deal with other capital issues, which could include like the St. Albans garage, transportation garage, for example.
And so
This would be on top of our other money that we set aside each year.
Yeah, you mean in terms of the, well,
Like the rainy day fund and the stabilization reserve, which we don't
Yes,
talk,
we
this
do.
would be, this is more of a working.
this is
reserve fund.
working, this is more of a working account.
So the middle part of this green front page is where we would transfer money in contingently. And the first A section is transferring monies in from the special, basically the DFR and abandoned property to the extent that they would have balances in them at the end of this fiscal year, 23, this June. We would transfer money in to the extent that they had a balance at the close of June. And then in sub B, where it's highlighted in yellow, this is where we would transfer contingent additional general fund in. And we'll cut, JFO will give you a number of what we think when we see what tax elections look like Friday morning against what we expect. That's basically why that's highlighted in yellow. We will probably have a recommended number.
Fill those in.
What we think is prudent for you to potentially
And we did that last year.
transfer in, and then in sub B 1105 of the bill, which has right now the appropriations that the institutions committee would make under bucket 1 and bucket 2, we would have a third subsection in that section, which would be contingent appropriations. And I've listed the garage here. It might be the missing middle. You might have a relatively modest list of things that go into that category when you're done with, when we're all done adding up
That's
everything and understanding where we are.
St. Albans Garage Transportation.
It was funded with general fund dollars in the governor's proposal.
Oh, no, I know, but I just,
It is a transportation
And just like the match for the IIJA transportation would be out of this fund, so we're not using general fund directly to,
We're using contingent.
yeah, out of the special fund. Yes,
I have a question about sections, the middle part.
Yeah.
Supplemental contingent transfers. It says that the commissioner shall transfer to the sub-account created a sum not to exceed, but is it at the commissioner's discretion?
We gave him some discretion in the BAA, and so he may have, so we have amounts listed in the BAA for these, and he may not transfer all of those to the general fund, and that means they would have a balance in the fund. And we're saying, transfer, then you don't decide we're gonna put those balances into this fund up to the level that's already prescribed in the BAA. It's just a way of making sure that the DFR money and the abandoned property money that may or may not transfer at the end of the year comes somewhere, and it will come here.
But I guess what I mean is, it says that the commissioner shall transfer, and it seems like it's gonna say the unobligated fund balance, but then it says a sum not to exceed the amount listed. So he shall transfer, but it's at his or her option. So could they transfer $1?
shall is not an option though.
We gotta
Right,
transfer something up to.
But
Oh,
then
so I
it's,
see what you're saying about the dollar amount.
then it's completely at their discretion how much. So
So we'll work on that, that's a good
Not
catch.
very
Oh,
They're trying to make it up to the amount, the shall
could be
transfer.
$1.
So I'm sure that between the
Yeah.
close of the fiscal year and this, it's the amount that's listed.
Yeah.
as- Thank you.
So we can look at it more, but we wanted to, let this first draft and then people can have a chance to look at it. And also, you know, if you have questions or whatever, you can talk to me or Stephanie about the construct of this and the reasons that we feel that this is a better alternative. And the flexibility, and we've called it a variety of things, including the more everything fund, but here, it's a good way of giving, a structure to make sure that we've got some capacity there, to fund some of the
And
things.
it's the place where you set up those reserves for IIJA.
Yeah.
And then you do have the initial 4% construct in place as well. On the back, on the second and third pages of the green sheet, these are the D parts of the bill where we transfer dollars. And so the main changes here is we wouldn't transfer A, but E would become the two transfers into the tax fund. Which I should have made those green, I didn't. And we also have we didn't do the tax modernization piece, but we have to add that there. So that's the main thing that would be changing in the transfer section of the bill, concurrent with adopting this change to the cash fund.
So the dollars that are here for the contingency fund.
So the dollars, and these are not contingent, these are actual dollars
These are
transferred.
actual.
So E would actually put $18 million in, and the capital bill will spend that, and we'll put $40 million in, combined with the 25 that's in the fund. The capital bill will spend some of that, transportation will get
But
about
after
3
we
million
haven't
of
made
that,
a
and then the
decision on,
reserves will be out of that.
but we haven't made a decision on F yet. That's.
So you have not made a decision on that, that's why that's highlighted. But you, in your pass-through on G, you decided to fund the IT modernization fund, both the general fund and.
The way it has been, just more transparent.
And then the last thing is just striking out sort of the intent positioning language of the House on their contingent desires.
Let's just redone it.
Yeah.
So it's 5:30, committee. I think some people feel we've gotten through most of our goal for today. We did not get into the housing, and we did not get into the amendment on the dispatch yet.
That, there is a draft. So and I think there's a few other amendments that were floated in emails this afternoon. And we will take what David has, get what you've walked through this afternoon and combine it with.
You've kind of got a sense of.
Yeah, I mean, there's still be open decisions, obviously, on your
yes.
money, and we'll do that again. And then I think we're having, from the education construction bill, the construction piece and the PCB piece to talk about tomorrow.
And I'm hoping that we can get this done Friday.
The hope is that by the time we meet Friday, and I'm hoping that maybe you could meet at 11 or 11:30 Friday, and we would have a draft bill to put in front of you that you could review, and then we could make the changes to and get up to the secretary's office sometime Friday evening after you've had an afternoon of reading. You don't have to review the money, we'll do that all in spreadsheet form, so it's easy to follow.
I'm gonna be remote, right? So.
Well, we'll
as
send you
long
the
as it's
stuff.
We'll send
by,
you, yeah.
You know, I can
And-
read
and
my
the-
computer.
Yeah, the goal is the word part of the bill, will have everything in green, and anything that's still unclear to us highlighted in yellow, like we traditionally do. So you can see what you've changed, and you can, we'll be saying on the yellow ones, please make sure we need your answer on this. And then hopefully it won't take long to go through the basics. It may take a little bit more time, because I imagine you will still have some open one-time decisions to make on
We
Friday.
still do, and we've got some things that we need to add, including the 211. Funding gap and some other things that we will need to put out there, including we have the breast milk issue. I don't
We've got
know.
that whole list from health and welfare that includes a diaper bank.
Yeah, the paper bank is.
So, but I've asked the health department to check to see if WIC should be picking up breast milk. I mean, that's supposed to be the whole mission of the program. So maybe that is how that benefit can be funded. The diaper bank, we've funded through the food bank, but they want to be funded through the parent-child centers. And we still have to look at what we have for provider increases and what that looks like as a whole. And that, I think, is a sheet that we will have, as we've got variations. And then because we also have to put in the 9+ million for the facility in Bennington. The House did not do that.
Yeah.
So we've got, as
So we have to
a,
get the $10 million picture from.
so my only point is that some of the funding that may have come over from the House, we're gonna have to go back and obviously relook at, because we have got to accommodate, I would say, some of those core things. We have to keep the 211 system up if we want a 24/7 emergency response and information. So the question becomes one of what is not on the list, and the extent to which we can fund it, and where we're going to have to move money from on the one-time list to make it work. And I don't know, the one thing we've got some towns, as I say, who passed bonds. And the 39 million box that we gave institutions, is the House reduced the governor's proposed of 10 million down to 4.
This is the pollution
Yeah,
control
the
rate.
pollution control, and so we're trying to see if there's some money in clean water, I think.
Water, Dan said he had another idea, I had said I'd be able to circle back with him.
So, but, the problem is the town's voted on a bond in good faith, and they were doing this before the town meeting and the bonds got passed. So I'm just saying the landscape has changed in terms of what we have for expenditures. And so just because the House put it in doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to. And then we've got the big base pressure, recognizing what we need to do for our pensions. So we're going to be in a very different place than the House in terms of what we fund. And the other thing, of course, if we do the blueprint, that's a big chunk of money. And the House only did 1 year. And so if we say we're going to do it, then we've got to do the 2-year funding. And so that's going to be a matter of setting priorities. I think everybody's saying the state problem with addiction and drugs, it's very serious. And the number of people, the death, I guess, is higher. It's horrible. This is going to get into some of the things. We can give everybody a little and say, oh, you should be happy, or we can set some priorities and fund what we think needs to be done and make it more substantive. So that's going to be our challenge for the next couple of days. And with that said, I'm going to adjourn the committee for today.